When we talk about people-pleasing, we often describe it as a personality trait, or a kindness, but from a psychological perspective, it is frequently a survival strategy, a way for our nervous system to manage perceived threats. When you spend your life prioritizing the comfort of others over your own, your brain stays in a state of hypervigilance, constantly scanning the environment for signs of disapproval or conflict. To your nervous system, a frown or a short text from someone else feels like a threat to your safety. Consequently, when you begin the difficult work of letting go of people-pleasing, the most profound shift happens within your body. Your nervous system finally begins to feel safe. For years, you may have been living in a state of chronic fawn response, which is a stress state where we try to appease others to avoid a fight or flight scenario. This keeps your cortisol levels high and your heart rate variable. When you stop overriding your own boundaries, you are effectively telling your brain that it no longer needs to be on high alert. You are signaling to yourself that you can handle a moment of tension or a disagreement without it resulting in a catastrophe. This transition isn't immediate, and it often feels like a strange, quiet internal shift. You might notice that your shoulders drop away from your ears, or that your breathing becomes deeper and more rhythmic. This is because your brain is no longer dedicating massive amounts of energy to monitoring everyone else's emotional temperature. When you choose your own needs, you provide your nervous system with the predictability and security it has been craving. You are essentially creating a secure attachment with yourself. This newfound sense of safety allows you to rest, not just physical rest, but a deep psychological rest, where you aren't constantly preparing for the next person you might disappoint. It is the move from a state of threat to a state of safe and social, where you can actually engage with the world rather than just surviving it. One of the most exhausting parts of people-pleasing is the immense cognitive load it places on the brain, creating a constant internal friction that clouds our judgment. When you live to please others, your mind is perpetually split. There is the part of you that knows what you feel and need, and the part of you that is calculating what you should say or do to keep the peace. This creates a state of cognitive dissonance that drains your mental energy. When you finally let go of the need to manage everyone else's perceptions, this internal conflict begins to dissipate, and your mental clarity improves significantly. Think of your mind like a computer running too many background apps. People-pleasing is a high-energy app that never closes, constantly processing what do they think and how can I fix this. Once you close that app, you suddenly have a wealth of processing power available for your own life. You start to notice that decisions which once felt paralyzing become much simpler. You are no longer filtering every thought through the lens of potential outside judgment. This clarity allows you to reconnect with your own values and desires, which have likely been buried under layers of external expectations. You start to see your life with a sharper focus, because the fog of shoulds is lifting. This isn't just about making better choices, it's about the relief of having a mind that is no longer at war with itself. You gain the ability to be present in the moment, because you aren't 5 steps ahead, trying to predict how your words will land. When the noise of others' opinions is turned down, the volume of your own intuition is finally turned up. This mental space is where true creativity, problem-solving, and self-reflection happen. By removing the burden of people-pleasing, you aren't just changing your behavior, you are optimizing your brain's ability to function, lead, and experience joy without the constant static of self-betrayal. In the journey of self-growth, there is a common misconception that doing the right thing for your mental health will immediately feel good. However, when you stop people-pleasing, the first thing you are likely to meet is a heavy, uncomfortable wave of guilt. In Dr. Julie Smith's clinical approach, it is vital to understand that this guilt is not a moral compass, it is a conditioned response. For a long time your brain has associated saying no with danger or being a bad person. When you finally set a boundary, your brain triggers a guilt alarm to try and pull you back into your old safe patterns of compliance. But the transformative moment happens when you learn that you can feel guilt and still not change your mind. As you sit with that discomfort without rushing to fix it by apologizing or over-explaining, the guilt slowly begins to lose its power over you. It's like a muscle that has been held in a cramped position for years. As it begins to stretch, it hurts. But that pain is a sign of healing, not injury. Your brain is undergoing a process of neuroplasticity, relearning what is actually a threat versus what is simply a new social boundary. Eventually the alarm gets quieter. You realize that the world didn't end because you weren't nice in the way people expected. You begin to differentiate between unhealthy guilt, which comes from breaking your own values, and people-pleasing guilt, which comes from breaking someone else's expectations. This distinction is where your freedom lies. By tolerating the initial discomfort of guilt, you are training your brain to realize that you are allowed to exist as an individual with your own limits. You stop being a hostage to your own emotions and start becoming their observer. This shift allows you to act with intention rather than reacting out of fear. The guilt may still visit from time to time, but it no longer holds the keys to your life. You learn that you can be a deeply kind person and still be someone who says no, and that the discomfort of others is not a debt you are required to pay. The foundation of mental well-being is self-trust, yet people-pleasing is at its core an act of self-betrayal. Every time you say yes when you mean no, you are telling your subconscious that your own needs are less important than someone else's comfort. Over years, this erodes your confidence until you no longer feel like a reliable person to yourself. However, when you begin to choose yourself, you start the profound process of rebuilding that self-trust. Each boundary you set is a small deposit into a self-reliability bank account. You are sending a consistent signal to your mind that you are someone who has your own back. This isn't about being perfect, it's about being consistent. When you honor your own limits, your brain begins to register that it can rely on you to keep it safe and healthy. This strengthens your overall emotional stability because you are no longer at the mercy of the changing moods of those around you. You become your own secure base. This internal reliability is what people often mistake for confidence. True confidence isn't the loud belief that everyone will like you. It's the quiet knowing that you will be okay even if they don't, because you trust yourself to handle the outcome. This self-trust acts as a buffer against anxiety and depression because it reduces the feeling of being a victim of your circumstances. You start to feel more grounded, a term we use to describe someone who is connected to their own internal reality. As this trust grows, your self-esteem stops being something that is handed to you by others and becomes something you generate from within. You stop looking for external validation because the internal validation you've built through self-honesty is so much more durable. Rebuilding self-trust is the ultimate act of self-parenting, learning to show up for yourself with the same fierce loyalty you used to give away to everyone else. A common fear when letting go of people-pleasing is that it will destroy our relationships and leave us isolated. In reality, the opposite happens. Your relationships become more honest, and therefore more sustainable. People-pleasing actually creates a barrier to true intimacy, because you are never showing your real self. You are only showing the version of yourself you think the other person wants. This leads to a buildup of resentment, which is like a slow-acting poison in a relationship. You feel exhausted and unappreciated because you are doing things you don't want to do, and the other person often doesn't even realize the sacrifice you're making. When you stop people-pleasing, you remove that mask. This can be jarring for some people at first, especially those who benefited from your lack of boundaries, but it is the only way to build a connection that is actually real. Boundaries act like a filter. They clarify who is capable of respecting you and who was only there for the convenience you provided. This naturally reduces emotional exhaustion because you are no longer carrying the weight of maintaining a false harmony. You might find that some relationships drift away, but the ones that remain become much deeper. There is a profound relief in being known and still being loved. You no longer have to wonder, would they still like me if I said no, because you've already said it. This honesty creates a safe space where both people can be their authentic selves. You move from transactional relationships, where you give to get approval, to relational ones, where there is a genuine exchange of support and respect. By being honest about your needs, you actually give the people who love you the opportunity to show up for you. You stop being a martyr and start being a partner, a friend, or a family member who is present, energized, and truly there. We often think of emotional regulation as something we have to do to our feelings, trying to calm ourselves down or push feelings away. But when you are a people pleaser, your emotions are often dysregulated because they are being suppressed. When you ignore your own anger, sadness, or exhaustion to keep someone else happy, those emotions don't just disappear. They get stored in the body and eventually lead to burnout or explosive outbursts. When you start choosing yourself, emotional regulation actually becomes easier, not harder. This is because you are finally acknowledging the signals your brain is sending you. Emotions are data. They are information about our environment. Anger often tells us a boundary has been crossed. Sadness tells us we have lost something important. When you act on this data by setting a boundary or taking space, the emotion has fulfilled its purpose and can pass through you more efficiently. You feel less overwhelmed because you aren't trying to hold back a tidal wave of suppressed feelings. You start to experience what psychologists call emotional fluidity. Instead of being stuck in a loop of anxiety, You feel the feeling, you address the need, and then you move on. This creates a sense of resilience. You realize that you can handle big feelings because you are no longer afraid of what they are trying to tell you. By being on your own side, you stop being a source of stress for yourself. You become a supportive environment for your own emotional life. This doesn't mean life becomes perfect, but it means you are no longer fighting yourself on top of everything else the world throws at you. You have more emotional bandwidth, because you aren't wasting it all on suppression. Ultimately, letting go of people-pleasing allows you to live in alignment with your biology, leading to a much more stable, calm, and manageable emotional experience. Choosing yourself is not a one-time event. It is a daily practice of returning to your own side. It is the brave decision to stop being an observer of your own life and start being the lead character. As we've explored, this shift changes the very chemistry of your brain, moving you from a state of constant survival and threat into a space of safety, clarity, and genuine connection. It's important to remember that the discomfort you feel when you first set a boundary isn't a sign of failure, it's the sound of old limiting patterns, breaking away to make room for the person you were always meant to be. You are not difficult for having needs, and you are not unkind for having limits. You are simply becoming a person who is whole enough to give from a place of abundance, rather than a place of depletion. So as you move forward, I want you to hold on to this truth. The most important relationship you will ever have is the one you have with yourself. When you finally choose yourself above all else, you aren't losing the world. You are finally finding your place within it, with a mind that is calm, a heart that is honest, and a spirit that is finally truly free.